Hi, Captain Peter Cutsey again with another of my online briefings to help refresh your training, recurrent training, or any course you're taking if it's an initial course. Today, the topic will be manual reversion. That is loss of hydraulic system A and hydraulic system B pressure. The This will be part 1 of 3 in the manual reversion series. We're breaking it down into just an overview initially, and then part 2 will be into the checklist. And part 3 will be talking about some of the things that aren't written in the manual with respect to performance. So let's get right into the objective of today's briefing. It's to review the manual reversion procedure. So I don't know about you if, in my case, when I took training on this airplane, we did manual reversion in the lower levels. It was very difficult to handle the airplane because of the deadband in the flight controls. However, if we had been trained at flight level 410, quite a difference. If that happened at flight level 410, you're in manual flight and you could very easily lose the airplane. You could end up in a Dutch roll if you made the incorrect inputs into the rudder. And because the ailerons and elevators are so sloppy and you're so close to the minimum and maneuvering speed and the high speed buffet, that you have to really consider getting down immediately. We'll talk about that later. Let's have a look at how we would recognize a loss of system A and loss of system B. The master caution, of course, in front of both pilots on the glare shield with a 4-tone oral alert. The hydraulic alert on the first officer's annunciator panel. Low pressure system A and system B lights on the flight control panel on the overhead panel. And yaw damper also on that same panel. Alert would be on. And on the hydraulic control panel, the engine number 1 and engine number 2, high pressure pump, low pressure alerts would be on. And the electrical pump 2 on system A and electrical pump 1 on system B, also low pressure lights would be on. And if you called up the MFD, you could also would get a good indication, of course, of what's happening in your system as far as quantity and actual pressure in the system. So these items will give you the ability to recognize the problem. Just a quick little review on the hydraulic schematic. This is the hydraulic schematic. And remember, on the 737, you have 3 hydraulic systems, hydraulic system A, hydraulic system B, and that's what we're talking about losing today. But remember, you still have your standby hydraulic system. All right. Some of the inoperative and operative systems, just a quick review. We'll cover these again on the checklist on part 2 of this briefing, when we'll get right into the checklist. Note, inoperative systems, ground spoilers, all flight spoilers, nose wheel steering, and autopilots A and B. Trailing edge flaps, normal hydraulic system. I say normal because we do have the trailing edge flaps using the alternate electric power. The leading edge normal hydraulic system you've lost, but you have leading edge flaps using the standby hydraulic system. Normal landing gear extension, but you do have the ability to complete, and we'll look at that on day 2, the manual landing gear extension. And then the auto brake, you don't have auto brakes, of course, and you don't have the normal or alternate brakes, but you do have an accumulator, remember. And so inboard and outboard brakes have accumulator pressure only. And both reversers on the normal pressure you don't have, but you do have the reversers using the standby hydraulic system. So that's just a quick overview of what we're looking at. Now, let's look at some general information. Both hydraulic systems A and B inoperative, the ailerons and elevators are controlled manually. A noticeable deadband will be noticed in both of these controls. You'll find that it takes a lot of force to actually move, to roll on bank. And by the time you got there, you've got to anticipate it because there is quite a lag or a dead band. Now you can see why I mentioned if you're at flight level 410, you should come down to a lower level immediately. High control forces are required for turns, and control wheel must be forcibly returned to the aileron neutral position. Both electrical and manual trim are functional. Well, that's good news. Do not over trim. The airplane should be trimmed slightly, nose up, and light forward pressure held on the control column to minimize the effects of the elevator deadband. The rudder is powered by the standby hydraulic system. Caution must be used not to over control the rudder. And you could end up in a Dutch roll at high altitudes. When extending flaps using the alternate system, the recommended method for setting command speed differs from the method used during the normal flap extension. We'll talk about that again in part 2 of this 3-series video. When you extend flaps with normal hydraulic systems, you may set the command speed on the MCP to the next flap setting before the flaps reach that new setting. However, when using alternate flap, you must wait for the flap to actually move to that setting before you can select the speed. And that is most important. All right. VREF 15, we'll be talking about that in the checklist. The drag penalty, by the way, with leading edge devices extended, make it impossible to reach an alternate field. It may make it impossible. Remember, you're limited to flight level 200 with flaps extended. We'll talk more about that later. And incidentally, your gear is going to be down also because you manually lowered it. So we'll talk more about that in part 3. This is part of the checklist, which we'll look at in the next video. It's plan to extend flaps to 15 using the alternate flap extension. Time to flaps 15 is approximately 2 minutes. And if you were going to use VREF ICE, you would be adding 10 knots, as you can see here, to the flap 15 speed. Your VREF 15 selected to the scratch pad and inserted. Well, you select it to the scratch pad, add 10, and then insert it if you were going to be using it according to the checklist. And this is just what it would look like. Now, you're going to be at higher speeds. So your performance, we'll look at in part 3, will reflect that. You're going to use more runway, of course. So the alternate flap extension and manual gear extension we'll look at in the next video. I want to make these videos short. So let's go now to a little note here in the FCOM when extending or retracting flaps using the alternate flap switch. Allow 15 seconds after releasing the switch before moving the switch again to avoid damage to the alternate flap motor clutch. After a complete extend retract cycle, that is from flaps up to 15, then back to 0, allow 5 minutes. So that's something you want to be considerate of. All right, that's just a little overview and an introduction to the next video, which will be coming soon. If you want a briefing online, you can contact me with the information below, and my classroom, online Zoom classroom is above. All the information is there, and we can set up a briefing either alone or with your partner. I thank you for watching and see you in part 2.